Good morning.
The power of the gavel.
I tell you, Bob's ready to go on that under, I guess.
Turned? What happened?
We call to order the February 9th, 2010 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida. At this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Davis to lead us in the invocation, followed by the pledge from Commissioner Slaughter. Would everybody please rise?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to come before you to conduct the public's business. May we use your guidance, your knowledge, and your wisdom in all the decisions we make. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? If none, we'll proceed with the agenda as presented. Takes us to item number 5, proclamations and presentations. We have a presentation from members of the First Lego League on roundabouts, and I'd like to give a little introduction here before we have our guest speakers come up. We have the privilege this morning of hosting 7 members of the First Lego League, ranging in grades from 5th through 8th grade, and they're going to provide a presentation to us on roundabouts. The First Lego League is a global program created to get children excited about science and technology. A hands-on program for ages 9 through 14. This uses challenges based on real-work scientific problems to engage children into research, problem-solving, and engineering. The cornerstone of the program is its core values, which emphasize friendly sportsmanship, learning, and community involvement. Each yearly challenge has 2 parts, the project and the robot game. Working in teams of 3 to 10 children and guided by at least one adult coach, teams have 8 weeks to 1, build an autonomous robot to carry out pre-designed missions in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and analyze, research, and invent a solution to a real work problem. The culmination of all that hard work for many teams is the participation in the FFL event, much like a high-energy sporting event. Referees monitor and score the robot game. Judges review the team presentation. An FLL event is a pumped-up environment with music and excitement that celebrates the work the children have done throughout the season. It is my pleasure to welcome Evan Mackay, Matt McCoy, Matt Suriano, Jeffrey Lamoth, and Jacob Lamoth from Gifford Middle School, Devin Michaels from Sebastian River Middle School, and Sonia Michaels from Sebastian Elementary. These students are under the supervision of coach and school board member Debbie Mackay. Let's all give a warm welcome to our FFL League members. Come on up. So when you start, if the team leader would introduce your team first and then go into your presentation for us, please. And step right up to the microphone there. Don't be bashful.
Okay, we are a First Lego League team, and we're Team Pocket. That's our team name. And recently we competed at the regional competition, and we did well enough to get a bid to the state competition.
All right. Woo!
All right. Go Pockets.
And I'm Evan Mackay. Okay, there it is. Okay. We have a presentation on roundabouts that we would like to give.
Okay. Roundabouts in Indian River County. Okay, there's our table of contents. Okay, and here's the definition of a roundabout. It's a circular intersection with yield control of all entering traffic, channelized approaches, and appropriate geometric curvature, such that travel speeds on the circulatory roadway are typically less than 30 miles per hour. And here are all the benefits of having roundabouts.
They're efficient. Roundabouts dramatically increase average traffic flow by 30%. Because of the yield system of a roundabout, there's no more waiting forever at stoplights, even if no one's there. If someone isn't there, you can go. This gives roundabouts maximum efficiency. While waiting at a roundabout, you rarely ever lose all your momentum. Usually you can slow down a little and then keep going. This is the opposite of stop signs and stoplights, where you have to completely stop and start up again.
They're green. Cars aren't idling at roundabouts as much as they are at intersections. And because you rarely have to stop and lose all your momentum, no extra gas is wasted, meaning that there's less greenhouse gas emissions. Roundabouts don't require electricity to run, so that's less waste. And in a study replacing conventional intersections with roundabouts, it brought the carbon monoxide emissions down by 32%, nitrous oxide emissions down by 34%, carbon dioxide emissions down by 37%, and hydrocarbon emissions down by 42%. And another study found that 200,000 gallons of gas per year were saved at a group of 10 intersections replaced with roundabouts. That's about 30% saved.
Let's do that one.
Although roundabouts may cost more in the beginning, they will pay off big time in the long run, because stoplights cost about $5,000 each, and that's just for the light, plus the support and other constructions needed at an intersection amount to about $100,000 per intersection. Then the electricity can cost $15,000 per year, as the study in Anchorage found. The money we would save would be tremendous and more than enough to convince people that roundabouts are worthwhile. And there has been emphasis on infrastructure in the stimulus bill, so now would be the perfect time to build roundabouts. There is no need to repair or replace roundabouts after disasters, unlike stoplights that can be easily damaged.
They're safe. Roundabouts are much safer than the traditional intersections. Because of their natural curvature, it's practically impossible to have a head-on or T-bone collision between two cars. Accidents are mainly side swipes, which reduce injuries and fatalities. A study by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety examined 24 roundabouts in the U.S. that were switched from normal intersections. They found that accidents declined 39%, injury accidents declined 76%, and fatal accidents plummeted 90%. During natural disasters such as hurricanes, especially in Indian River County, there wouldn't be any risk of debris, loose electrical wires, or destroyed constructions. In a roundabout, there's pretty much nothing to destroy.
They're appealing. Roundabouts can be much more aesthetically appealing than traditional intersections. The curvature of a roundabout is more aesthetically pleasing than a standard intersection. In the middle of a roundabout, you can have landscaping such as gardens, artwork like statues, or a fountain. Okay, do you want me to do this? Yeah. They're reliable. Roundabouts are completely self-governing, so people have to take the responsibility to drive using common sense. People's heightened awareness increases the reliability of traffic. In times of crisis such as hurricanes, especially in Indian River County, roundabouts are safer than normal intersections tenfold. There's no need to prepare by taking lights down or putting up warnings, and these things would waste money. Also, the stress need for additional manpower, like the police, would be non-existent because roundabouts would still be self-governing.
Detriments of roundabouts. They take up too much space.
This is a weak argument because that is nothing compared to the lives that it saves.
They cannot replace existing intersections.
Which is why we have to get with the program and install roundabouts where we are making new plans.
And no one knows how to use them.
Using a roundabout is one of the most simple things to learn. It should come naturally to most people. We could have signs showing the flow of traffic, a website to get the word out, Add it to the requirements to getting a driver's license. The possibilities to teach people are endless.
They may include the cost for acquiring the land. Including the cost for acquiring the land. They cost too much.
They can't cost any more than the average. They can't cost any more than the average intersection, and over time, roundabouts pay off because there's minimal maintenance involved.
And they don't work on small roads.
What are you?
Whoops. What are you? No.
Where is it?
Right here.
Oh.
I'm getting to it.
Now you're in benefits.
Wait. I know. I'm going. Okay. Okay.
The idea is not to replace every intersection with a roundabout, and they aren't the best on really small roads. Roundabouts are mainly meant to increase traffic efficiency on larger roads.
And they need more light at night because there's no stoplight.
A couple lights around a roundabout could solve this problem.
Do you want to read that one? You can skip that one if you want. Doesn't it take forever to get around?
If you've ever seen the movie National Lampoon's European Vacation, you would think that people always get stuck in the middle. Unless it's a busy day, you don't have even a slight chance of getting stuck. In fact, the idea behind roundabouts is that they flow even better than intersections. The system is based on yielding for people, so you will almost always be on a roundabout for no more than 15 seconds, even on the busiest of days.
Okay. Here's the review. And roundabouts are the best way to increase the efficiency, safety, and environmental friendliness of traffic. Indian River County has the opportunity to pioneer the use of roundabouts. Roundabouts could be put in places like 66th Avenue and 26th Street, 58th Avenue and 26th Street, and Royal Palm Point and Indian River Boulevard. Roundabouts are the future of traffic. One day people will wise up and realize it. And that's our PowerPoint.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I think Commissioner Wheeler, did you have something to say?
Well, I didn't have a question. I was invited over to Debbie Mackay's house to meet these young people a couple of weeks ago on Sunday when they were working on this. And I got to tell you, they thanked me for being there and all that, but I got to tell you, the pleasure was mine. I walked away from there feeling like I was walking on air. I was so impressed with them, their ability to work together, the research they've done, and the very mature thought that went into this. And I'm just very, very proud of these young people. They're just fantastic.
Good. Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, I think that was a wonderful presentation, and every time that if you just want to turn around, you'll see Bob Keating in the back of the audience. He's with our staff. He's waving to you. Every time I see one of Bob Keating's presentations and his PowerPoints, his famous PowerPoints, I'm going to think of you seven. You guys did an awesome job, and we really appreciate it, and it was very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess the only question I have is that since today is FCAT Rights, how many more questions do you want us to keep asking you to keep you here all day? Well, Team Pocket, thank you very much for your presentation. Good luck with the state competition, and we'll look forward to hearing how well you do in the future, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, team. Well, it's certainly nice to know we have some outstanding young citizens coming forward here in the community.
Absolutely.
I'm sure all the moms and parents are very proud there. Okay, that takes us, there's no minutes to approve, informational items, any discussion on those? Seeing none, we'll move to 8, the consent agenda. Is there anybody wish to pull anything on consent?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Fletcher, seconded from Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I think somebody had a...
Okay, Carolyn, you want to come up, please?
Yeah, there's just one thing on the consent agenda. I know you usually always do that, but G, Chinese drywall. I know all about that. It says that It says that Indian River County wants to pay for the Chinese drywall, and maybe the state of Florida, and maybe the federal government, just with you all, it would be good not to let Indian River County pay to replace the Chinese drywall. It could cost $100,000 per house or something to do that. So just so you know, just get it off Indian River County. Maybe you could ask the state or the federal government. That's G. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I did want to pull item F. I apologize. I didn't get that out sooner. Commissioner Fleischer, would you mind amending your motion?
Motion to approve, less item F.
Thank you. And Commissioner Davis, you're still good? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Item F, I just want to clarify, this is travel to Tallahassee, and it was specific to the Florida Association of Counties Conference, and the legislature is going to be up there for 6 weeks or so, and I think I'd just like to change that just to approve out-of-county travel to Tallahassee during the 2010 legislative session, so we have a little bit more flexibility when we go up there. I'll be happy to make that motion.
Unless we've rescinded it, I believe that we have blanket authorization for Tallahassee travel.
I asked Joe Baird about that. He thought it was just committee travel.
I thought it was just committee travels, but just make it clear so no one thinks that
No, because I remember back when we were working on several issues, one of them was the right-of-way exchange on County Road 512 with the DEP at 102nd Terrace. After there was a little bit of discussion from the commission back and forth, and some of the travel times were basically whenever the committee were meeting. Now, when I say the committees, it was the trustees at the time, not a county committee. And so after that, we came back, and I believe that motion passed unanimously for us to have blanket authorization to go to Tallahassee.
I thought it was for committees only, but it's just this clarifies it, makes it more broader.
And the reason for that is you're not sure when they're doing what up in Tallahassee, and it's time sensitive. And if there's a commissioner's got an issue that they need to go work on, gave them authorization without having to have a full board vote to go to Tallahassee.
Okay.
Now they have to explain it to the taxpayers, but
and we may have that. I think this will just clarify it for at least for now. So, Commissioner Sari made the motion. I'll second that. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Nothing unconstitutional, public items, no public discussion. That takes us all the way to item 12A, Departmental Matters, Community Development, item 1. Request for authorization for the Community Development Director to make application for an Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. Memorandum dated January 28, 2010. Bob, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. This item relates to a staff request for authorization to submit a energy efficiency community block grant. This is an opportunity that the county has because there's federal money out there, and this money has been distributed to the state, and there's about $12 million in competitive funds that we can vie for with this grant application. I do want to tell you this application has really been a joint effort by a number of departments. Jason Brown's here from Budget, and besides Budget and Community Development, General Services and Public Works are also involved in this. I do want to point out that the application itself has been a moving target, and the numbers in the application now are a little different from the numbers that are in your backup. The new grant amount requested is $565,314, and the match is $507.47. The match amount is money that actually has already been encumbered with a Florida Power and Light contract that the county has to do some upgrades to some of its buildings. And the major activities that will be done with the grant are putting in a new solar water heater for the jail, doing lighting, HVAC, and energy efficiency improvements at the Gifford Community Center, and also doing traffic signal LED light replacements. We're not applying for the full amount of grant funds that we could, and we're focusing everything in the Gifford area, and that's to maximize the number of points that we get on the grant application going forward. There are additional points if the project is located in a certain type of area, such as an enterprise zone or a front porch community, and for that reason we limited the activities to the Gifford area, and that's the reason we're not using the full $1.2 million amount that we could apply for. If we applied for monies outside of that area, outside the front porch and enterprise zone area, we would lose the points that we get for that. Basically, the activities that are being done here are activities that either the county would have to do or activities that the county would like to do, like the solar water heater, that are not financially, really not financially supportable without the grant activities. There are a lot of benefits to doing it, but it was evaluated as part of FPL's energy audit, and it was determined it didn't have the payback to warrant doing the solar water in and of itself, but with the grant it will pay dividends and achieve some of the other objectives to the grant. So basically, staff recommends that the board approve the proposed application, authorize the chairman to sign the application. I do want to point out we have in the recommendation authorize the chairman to execute the resolution. We're going back and forth whether or not to have a resolution. We decided not to have a resolution, so we recommend that you authorize the chairman to execute the resolution. Authorize me to make any minor necessary changes to the application itself. We've got a few more days to submit it, and it has been kind of a moving target. And authorize staff to submit the application.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of staff?
Just a couple.
Commissioner Davis. And
Bob, just I'd like to give you the authorization for some minor changes, but in dealing with electricity, let's not have any major changes come back before us, or
yes.
That could just kind of keep those to very minimal if we can.
Yes.
And secondly, in looking at the retrofits, for example, up at the Gifford Community Center, are we maximizing the incentives that Florida Power and Light grants for replacement, or that never mind, they're not on Florida Power and Light either, are they?
I can't remember.
Some of the Gifford residents, are you talking about Gifford? Some is Florida Power and Light. Half of it's Florida Power and Light, and half of it's City of Vero Beach.
Any idea whether? Because I mean, there's at Gifford
Florida
Community
Power
Center,
and Light right there.
There's some tremendous opportunities for replacements of energy efficient or two energy efficient systems right now that Florida Power and Light's offering for rebates, and I didn't see that really in here whether or not it was.
And just to tell you, the Gifford Community Center is one of the buildings that FP&L did not audit for us as part of the audit that they did before. They were doing other county buildings. As part of this application, they will do an energy audit specifically for the Gifford Community Center, and that'll be the basis of some of these improvements.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jason, you good? Commissioner Wheeler?
I just wanted to make clear, this is, what is in here is everything is for county buildings, and there are no individual grants in here for people that are submitting with a lot of the tax credits that they're offering now for various things from the federal government.
That's correct. Now, St. Lucie is doing a program whereby they are subsidizing some local, some individual improvements, but with this grant, that's not an allowable expense.
Okay.
Okay. You good? Okay. This is not a public hearing. Was there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak on this matter?
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. No further discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Takes us to community development item number 2, consideration of extension of the temporary suspension of impact fees. Memorandum dated February 1, 2010. Bob?
Thank you. Back in last March, the Board of County Commissioners, for economic development purposes, actually to stimulate economic development, the board approved the suspension of 5 of the county's 9 impact fees for a period of 6 months. That suspension would have expired on September 30th, but prior to that time, the board approved extending that suspension. Currently, the suspension will expire on March 31st if it's not extended beyond then, and that's why staff is here today to get your direction as to whether or not you want to extend the suspension of the 5 impact fees. Generally, just to give you an example of what this means for a single-family house, we really have 3 different categories of houses with different impact fees. When you look at all 3 of them, it averages to about $1,000 per single-family house, $1,000 less by suspending these 5 fees. Really, these 5 fees are not the big ticket impact fees that we have. It's not the transportation or parks, some of the others that are a bigger dollar amount. But it does make a significant difference. There is some information in this backup as to what actually the results have been. And I think everyone knows we haven't had much building activity at all in the last year. And actually, activity went down in the 4-month period we looked at this time compared to the last 4-month period, the 4-month period of the first extension. You can see in the backup that we had, we compared 3 different periods. And basically, in the last 4-month period, from October 1 to January 31st, we had 66 single-family building permit applications, and that is in the unincorporated county in the city of Vero Beach. I do want to point out that on the 3rd page of the staff report, there is a mistake. There's a reference to 47 single-family building permits, but it was 66, and really the total amount of money we didn't collect from the single-family building permits that were applied for in the city of Vero Beach and Indian River County was about $66,000. So it's not a significant amount that we have deferred. But basically, it's kind of amazing if you look at the numbers. Actually, from the last 5 years, each year has been about a 50% reduction in single-family building permit applications. In calendar year 2009, we had only 217 single-family building permit applications. The year before, we had 494. The year before that, 922. The year before that, 1,802. And then back in both 2004 and 2005, we had over 3,000. So after 2005, the amount of single-family building permit activity has declined just about 50% each year. That's not going to happen this year because actually just in the first 5 days of this month, we've had 18 single-family building permit applications. So it might be doing a little better. Things might be looking up. But basically, activity has been slow. There hasn't been much going on for the last year. And actually, if you go back, it's been declining for a number of years. Basically, when staff looked at this, staff doesn't have any concerns recommending that you go ahead and extend the suspension. We would recommend that instead of 6 months, do it for a year so we don't have to be back in front of you for another 4 months. Also, to actually put the suspension in effect, there'll have to be a public hearing, and we've tentatively scheduled a public hearing for March 16th. So if you authorize the extension today, we will go ahead and advertise for that public hearing and be back to you at that time. We also have a requirement in our interlocal agreement on impact fees with the municipalities to give them a 30-day notice before any changes have been made, and they have been given that 30-day notice, and I've gotten feedback from at least one that they don't have any concerns with doing it. So with that, staff would recommend that you authorize us to go ahead and advertise for a public hearing on March 16th to go ahead and extend the temporary suspension of the 5 impact fees.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes. Commissioners, what I find interesting when you look at this, and I think it's been clear where I've been on this issue from the start, but if you look at the commercial side of this, looking at it before we instituted, or you had 6 at the very beginning, and then we've been able to hold those steady. When you look at the residential side of this, you're looking at less than a 10% reduction in residential impact fees. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that if we could do without the residential, we would, but according to legal counsel, we can't. What I'm seeing here is I'm seeing us able to keep the commercial side of it flat, but certainly up from the lows that we started back in October of 2009. And I know that there's, for example, the veterinarian, Dr. Beal with her surgery center that's up on the corner of 66th Avenue and 69th Street. She's pretty close to getting a CO, it looks like, on that as I drove by there this morning. She's hired an additional veterinarian. That's somebody that's coming to the community with a PhD. And, of course, the support staff for that is going to be the only surgery center for equine or horses or large animals, really, from between Gainesville and West Palm Beach. That's the kind of targeted stuff that I think that really was my intent from the get-go on this. And this is doing what I think needs to be done. And you see the trend on the single-family residential continuing to drop. You know, I may be wrong, but I don't see that trend reversing anytime soon.
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, what was the financial, the $66,000 for single family? What was it for the commercial developments?
Actually, I didn't go in and look at all of them, and even on the single family, that is applying an average of 1,000 per house to the number of houses. To get an exact number, we'd have to look at how many are the small houses with the lower fees and how many of the bigger houses.
I'm talking the commercial.
Right, and I'm not sure. I didn't go in and look at each
one.
one.
Is it significant?
If I could help on that. I'm not the community development director, but if you look at it, the traffic impact fees stayed the same, and the largest portion of commercial impact fees is the traffic impact fee side of it. Obviously, you have the schools. Well, commercial structures don't pay school impact fees. And so, as you look through the matrix that is designed, it's really not quite as far as I'd like to go with it, based on the simple fact that take the highest reduction in the impact fees that we allowed is really something like mini storage or industrial trades, and the reason for that is because the structure that fits the most has the most reduction in it. It's only like 35%. When you jump up to a bank or even a restaurant, it ratchets it almost only to 15%. So I mean, this is it's a token step in the right direction, but certainly one that I wouldn't want to let off of right now.
Well, I would agree with that. In fact, my concern is commercial property, commercial development. I've said right along, in my opinion, it's not the commercial, for the most part. There are exceptions, but for the most part, it's not the commercial that creates the drain on the system. It's the residential.
Yep.
But yet the commercial gets hung with the biggest bill. So, Bob, before the March public hearing, I'd like to see some numbers on comparing the residential with the commercial and see if there's a balance there, or if we're, see where the numbers are on it.
I will do it.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Slurry.
Just to let people know why I'm voting against this is the same reason I've given the last times, and that's because I don't believe that impact fees ought to be used to promote or slow growth one way or the other. I don't believe it ought to be used as a growth management tool. I believe it ought to just pay for the development as it comes along. I agree with Commissioner Wheeler and Commissioner Davis that commercial impact fees are probably too high, and I would certainly support and have supported in the past a reduction there. But that's a permanent reduction based on some reasoning, and not to use impact fees to either promote growth or manage growth in any way.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, I don't see this as managing growth from my perspective. I did this because I believe from the very start that commercial impact fees were not equitable in comparison to the demand on the system versus single family or residentials. If it weren't for the residential units being built and people moving in here, there would be no commercial development. And we tend to sock it to the commercial properties because we think they've got the biggest financial ability to pay. And And plus, and you're looking at voters and residentials and everything else, and it's just, the bottom line is that it's the residential growth that creates the draw for the commercial to be developed. So I don't look at it as a tool to manage or whatever. I went with this because I believe from the start, as I said, I think commercial impact fees are too high and they're not equitable.
Okay. Commissioner Fleischer?
I think the comment on it being a tool to manage growth is an opinion, is a view. It may be substantiated, but from the very beginning, I supported the reduction of impact fees. I think many of us supported the reduction of commercial impact fees, and unfortunately, it was determined by council that we couldn't go in that direction. I believe that the reduction of impact fees is a tool in the toolbox. It reduces the sticker shock, and it was probably the #1 concern as the commercial establishments or the commercial trade that wanted to come to this county voiced their opinion very clearly. And we did lose a lot of applications during the time when this was initiated. I believe there was a bank that came here to Indian River County and wanted to start business, and I think that the sticker shock scared them away, and they now have placed their business elsewhere. I think it was about $300,000 that they were looking at just to set up on the corner, and we lost that trade. And I believe that adjoining counties have reduced their impact fees. Some have placed a moratorium. I don't know if that's fully the answer. It has not invited growth. We're not looking at growth. We're looking at jobs. We're looking at businesses to be able to come to this community and be supported by this community and work in this community and make it more viable.
Thank you. I just a question for Will. Will, anything in the last 12 months where you would change your opinion that we cannot apply this just to commercial and not residential and commercial?
No, the whole basis for impact fees is that you're paying the fair share of the demand that you put on these facilities. And the studies are that trips leave houses and they go to commercial places, and they leave commercial places and come back to houses. It's an attraction generation thing, and one, were you to not charge impact fees to commercial facilities, I think you'd undercut the whole rationale for charging any at all. It's supposed to, through a technical analysis, tell you how much new traffic, how much new law enforcement, whatever, this facility is generating, and recover those costs in a proportion to the impact that the project has. So no, I haven't changed my mind.
Okay, thank you, Will. Any further questions at this point? Commissioner Fleischer?
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to ask Mr. Keating and Mr. Brown if, when we do bring this back for a presentation, if that's the way this is going, I'd like to see an analysis of what each one of the pots, the segments of the impact fees, how they fared during the storm, where they were when we began and where they stand now, just to have an assessment on where we also stand as far as having to return those impact fees if they're not used, as far as the timing.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's concerns about looking at the dollars lost, but I guess I'm more of a Reagan supply sider in looking at this and understanding that a fee is a tax and a tax is a fee, and right now is not the time to raise taxes nor fees. And I believe that this, it might be modest or meager, but it certainly is something to do with the job creation out there of any kind, and this is just simply the right thing to do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Staff has a recommendation to advertise for a public hearing on March 16th to consider extending the current suspension for a one-year period effective April 1, 2010 to March 31, 2011. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Fleischer for staff recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Solari in opposition. Thank you. 12C, General Services, Indian River County Judicial Center HVAC recommissioning, memorandum dated February 3rd, 2010. And Mr. Frame, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Tom Frame, General Services Director.
Your light's not on, Tom.
There you go.
Tom Frame, General Services Director. With me is Mr. Lynn Williams, our Facilities Manager. The agenda item we have this morning, of course, is a request to the board to seek recommissioning services over at the courthouse, but it's probably appropriate to back up a little bit and just give the board a little bit of history, both of the courthouse and what's brought us here today. And if we back way up, these air quality issues really got created as an advent probably of the energy crisis of the 70s, when we started developing energy codes, and that began to change how we constructed buildings. And a lot of times buildings began to suffer from things known as tight building syndrome. In essence, the buildings were extremely tight. You no longer have windows that open. And in a lot of cases, the design on those facilities were not in keeping with where it needed to go. You could have a building that did not have any fresh air coming into the facility. It was merely recirculating the conditioned air. You had a situation where you might have exhaust fans in restrooms and other areas that were pumping air out of the building. So the buildings began to have a negative air pressure, and of course a lot of times that caused the wicking of outside air and humidity into the buildings, which began to create a lot of problems. In addition, depending on the occupant load, you had a situation where if you didn't have additional fresh air coming in, you'd also have a increasing level of CO2. And so over the course of time, mechanical engineers have looked at the system's designs and have really addressed those issues. I can tell you that the air conditioning system in the courthouse is an excellent system. I can tell you that the air conditioning system in this facility is an excellent facility, or a system. I would also tell you they're a lot more complex than the average person probably thinks about, because most people think of their air conditioning in terms of what they have at home. You see a vent and you know that the cool air comes out. You may see a thermostat on the wall just like you have at home, and you think that that's the control of how we provide that air to you. Well, it's not quite that simple, and certainly I would invite any of the board members at any time you'd like to take a tour of what our system really looks like, if you've never had the opportunity to go into our air handling rooms and just see how complex these systems really are. Today, these systems are operated by computers. We have variable control boxes that sit at the end of the ducts, and we have, for our facilities, both the courthouse and here, these are chilled water systems. And what that means is we get our coolness in the air from chilled water. We have chiller plants. That water is pumped into the building, and we blow air across like a radiator that has that chilled water, and then we pump that air out into the occupied spaces. The mechanical engineer will design that system predicated on what the estimated occupant load's going to be, the heat load that will be generated by computers and everything else. We don't typically have heaters in these type of facilities, and so sometimes you may experience, when we have extremely cold weather, we get complaints about it's a little cool in the building. Well, in order to do that, sometimes we just have to cut off the chilled water because we don't have a way of really supplying heat. Although I will tell you, the way we modify that air temperature when it comes in from the chilled air, we actually heat it up. It sounds kind of silly because you pay money to chill that water down, and then you pay money to heat it back up in terms of the air so that you can have that balance in there. And generally, there's a thermostat that's in certain areas, but it only has a very minor amount of what you would call localized control. We have a larger control by computer. So the point I'm trying to make, we deal with extremely complex systems, and in order to ensure that every occupied area is in a proper temperature, proper humidity, the proper CO, it's all controlled by sensors. It's all through the system, and of course we review a lot of that. It's controlled by computer, but we also go in and do site. For instance, when the administrator calls me and tells me that y'all are concerned that this room is too cold or too hot, there's certain things that we do to increase either the heat or the coolness. So the first thing I want to say, trying to say, is these are extremely complex. And during the 90s was a period of time, frankly, when a lot of buildings were beginning to suffer. And I'll give you two big examples in the state of Florida that are just known everywhere. One was the Polk County Courthouse, and the other one was the Martin County Courthouse. These were clearly classic examples of sick buildings. And about the same time that they were having the problem, we were in the course of building the courthouse. And of course, the county was farsighted enough at that time to go out and hire a forensic engineering firm, G. & Jensen. And what they did was they came in and they looked at the design of that courthouse system. And they made a number of recommendations. And I think if you look, we provided, I believe, a cost sheet as an additional backup. Looks like this. And you'll notice in there were a number of things that were done there. There were change orders to increase fan sizes. This dealt with airflow in the building. We increased louver sizes. We removed internal insulation from the duct system, which could be places where mold can grow and habitate. And all the insulation of all our duct systems are on the exterior, so all you've got basically is a metal chute that we're moving air through, and the insulation is on the outside. So we don't have a medium typically where mold can find places to get into and create major problems. Again, a recommendation of the forensic engineer at that time. We also added additional fresh air intake. So there were a number of things that were taken into consideration when the courthouse was built. And as you can see there was an additional $283,000 worth of specific improvements to ensure that we had a building that had excellent indoor air quality. Now, having said that, over the course of time, we've had complaints of various things here and there, and sometimes people have different levels of sensitivity in terms of allergens and all kinds of things. I had a lady call the other day concerned about the fact that our buildings, we had deodorizers in the bathroom. She was concerned that people wore perfume. She had a tremendous sensitivity to chemicals. She was even complaining about the type of chemicals we clean our building with. Well, sometimes there's things you can do and sometimes there's things you can't do to deal with people's sensitivity to those particular allergens. This summer, about July, we got a complaint in the courthouse dealing with an odor problem. Ultimately, we brought in our industrial hygienist, and in this particular case, we did find some mold behind some windows in the area of Judge Pegg's office, and we took care of that problem and fixed it. That was a problem that we identified that was from water intrusion from the hurricanes. Then later, we got some complaints about some additional odors in the courtrooms. Again, trying to deal with that problem, we went in and looked at it. One of the things that we looked in the ceiling and we saw some ceiling tile that we thought ought to be changed out. Unfortunately, when we changed those ceiling tile out, when we put new ceiling tile in there, they started off-gassing for whatever reason. We never had that problem typically with the new ceiling tile that we'd used before.
They started what?
Off-gassing. The chemicals that were used to make that synthetic material was it's like a
vinyl smell.
Yeah.
Like a VOC release?
Yeah. So ultimately it created a problem with Judge Hawley, and in that case he quit going to his courtroom. Ultimately the chief judge from Martin County came up. We met with Judge Levin. At the same time we were looking at that problem, we had an issue that arose in another area from the county judges. They called about an odor. As soon as we went into their area, we could tell it was a gas. Or an odor that was coming from the drains. We knew exactly what the odor was like. In that particular instance, what had happened was we had built, when the structure was built, automatic drip drains that go into the traps in the floor drains of those air handler rooms where the condensate drips out. They had dried up because there was no water in those P-traps. There's a negative pressure in there because it's the air handler room. They pull that back out of the pipes circulated it in. As soon as we poured water in those drains, that smell went away. And so what we did was we went in and we changed out all those bad valves. We subsequently did a PM that says we're going to pour water periodically in those 4 drains, whether they need it or not, to just make absolutely doubly sure that that doesn't happen again. We haven't had that problem again. When Judge Levin was there, we went into courtroom 6, Judge Hawley's courtroom, and we told him it was the ceiling tile that was making the odor. So there was a question, I think, in his mind whether that was the case. I directed Mr. Williams to have his staff remove those ceiling tile immediately. By the end of the day, that odor had dissipated. By the next day, there was no odor there. That took care of the odor issues. Now, at all times when we've had these complaints, we've also brought our industrial hygienist in to make doubly sure that we examine and make sure that there isn't something else that's there that could be a problem. And we've got numerous copies of these reports that ESH has done for us here, or EHS or ESH, whichever. Anyway, Banks Clark is the industrial hygienist. And at all times, we've come out with a clean bill of sale in terms of any problems there. But one of the problems that we always seem to get involved with is where the occupants of the building begin to start a rumor mill about what the problem is, and it tends to turn into gossip sometimes. That's one reason we always bring the hygienist in, because it's difficult to battle people's opinion about what the problem is, because they always think it's the worst. Again, I had the issue with the chief judge and the fact that the employees weren't convinced that our industrial hygienist was correct. We then agreed, you select an industrial hygienist. He picked a fellow by the name of Phil Morey, Dr. Phil Morey, who is a renowned certified industrial hygienist. He was involved in both the Polk County Courthouse and the Martin County Courthouse. And he did some inspections, and again, as we've identified, he found some minor things we think. His report indicated in one case there was some minor mold in the air handler room. There was one around a label. There was no significant issue of mold found based on reading his report, and he ultimately came out with 4 main issues, and we've tried to address those. One of the things that came up during that course of time was we had the emergency generator kicked on, and of course it was normally we did that on Saturdays, typically when the courthouse was not occupied. It did it on a Tuesday morning. The fresh air intake pulled those exhaust fumes in. Again, we got complaints about that. We've taken steps to make sure now by doing the proper sequences, when that generator kicks on, the fresh air intake shuts down. There's no way now to suck that diesel fumes in there. There was a question about the vacuum cleaners being used. We've now assured that we're using HEPA vacuum cleaners. I did an action form there that kind of identified the things that we were undertaking. Dr. Moore had suggested that we secure a forensic architect. We didn't think that was the appropriate step, particularly given the fact that we hadn't really identified that there was a problem for him to be chasing. So what we suggested instead was to do some infrared photography. We've done the infrared photography on the outside of the building, and the report, you have a copy of the report, I believe, and we've just recently completed the infrared photography on the inside of the building. I don't have the report, but I can tell you that the results on that is that there was no elevated measures of moisture found anywhere in the inside of the building. We subsequently got a complaint, and what was driving this was from one of the judges about a smell in her office. And Dr. Morey made a comment, which was kind of the driving reason we were trying to at least identify that there wasn't moisture in the building. It was after he had left and the judge had complained of this odor. He made a comment that odor had to be coming from mold, and it had to be in the wall if that's... And frankly, he wasn't there to see that. We haven't found that problem, but we were still trying to move forward and take a proactive position. One of the things that we did look at, and one of the things that we've requested was what we have here today, and that's the use of a recommission agency. We used, as you can see, if you look at the price sheet, one of the things you'll see on there is the Phoenix agency. We used them back when we first completed the building. There's an $85,000 fee back then, and they were hired by us and they worked for us. They didn't work for the contractor and they didn't work for the design engineer. And what they do is they look at a system to determine is the system working as it was designed to work, and was that system built as it was designed. And there's a lot of tweaking that you do to a system. They came in and they did that. And like I said earlier, these systems have sensors. They detect CO2, they detect humidity, they detect temperatures. These sensors, after a period of time, can begin to desensitize and as they get older. And so one of the things that we thought, if we were going to spend any money looking at the system, because the other industrial hygienists had suggested that we also hire an engineering firm to evaluate our entire air conditioning system. We didn't really think that was necessary, since we'd gone through this step of making sure that we had a good system to begin with. So that, again, was the reason we thought the concept of dealing with a recommission agent made a lot of sense. Let's look and see if there's anything that's occurred to this system over the last 15 years, because the system now is 15 years old. And the reason that we looked at the Phoenix agency was because they had familiarity with our system. If we went out and attempted to hire someone else, we anticipated that the cost would be significantly higher. The time to secure those services would take some time. So that's why we really had come forth with making this recommendation. The whole issue was that we were attempting to deal with a proactive situation to try to ensure everyone, particularly the occupants of the building, that we were not taking these as idle issues, and we wanted to make sure everybody understood that we were investigating all the complaints that we got. That's what brought us up to this point in our request.
Tom, just one kind of to summarize then, we had the issue of the odor from the drains that had dried out, and we've corrected that. That's
yes.
Correct? We had the issue of the odor from the new ceiling tiles off gassing, and you've corrected that.
Correct.
We have the issue of when the generator kicked in, the backdraft sucking that in, and you've done a lockout on that.
We've corrected that.
We've corrected
That's
that. Okay. So we're just down to now just one office now still has an odor. Is that
and let me let Mr. Williams can indicate what his findings were. When we got the call about the odor in that office, Mr. Williams went over there. He detected an odor. I don't want to put words into Mr. Williams. I'll let him indicate what occurred.
Okay. Hey, Lynn. Nope.
The odor is not an everyday odor. In fact, January 11th, we had a complaint of an odor. We responded to it. I haven't heard anything about an odor since. When I went there, I could detect an odor. Couldn't identify it as mold. Couldn't identify exactly what it was. Our subsequent visits with ESH, basically we did some measurement of air pressures, and if there's anything that I see going on over there, it's pressurization from one space to another that's allowing odors to transfer. And in my personal opinion, it's flavored coffee, or a combination of flavored coffee being brewed somewhere else and deodorizers. We haven't found anything with moisture presence to suggest that there's a mold colony anywhere. If we had water intrusion in or around a window, it wouldn't dissipate in a day or two, so we were there almost immediately and did measurements. We did infrared within 2 days. The moisture would have still been present. So it is a localized issue, and it's not one that we've been able to identify. We can't find a source. I'd offer the same thing Mr. Frame did. I'd be happy to show anybody our air handlers and compare them to yours at home. So
okay, and then the recommissioning will just be to make sure that all sensors are working properly and we're getting positive air pressure in all the offices and the chambers?
That would be the phase one of it, yes.
Okay.
And at the end of phase one, they would be looking at either making some recommendations for remedial action or identifying what components may or may not be operating the way they were originally intended. But that's what the focus of the recommissioning is.
Okay, thank you. Comments?
Please.
Commissioner Davis and then Commissioner Solari?
Yes. I'd encourage every board member to take Tom up on his tour. Had the supervisor of elections from Martin County come up for a tour just to look at the facilities, and just a couple weeks ago, and that was really my first time looking at it. And it's amazing the technology that he's talking about and the sensitivity with the sensors. Tom, we have a positive airflow pressure in this building. Is the courthouse designed with a positive airflow also?
Yes.
Okay. Really, then the only question I have or concern are whenever we bring these consultants in to look at this odor that we haven't smelt for about 30 days, is somebody taking into account the antecedent weather conditions so that we could look into, if it's coming and going, it could be moisture coming in and then drying out that's causing this, and if they show up 3 days after a weather event versus 2 weeks after a weather event, you're going to probably smell a difference in if there is some kind of a leak.
Well, actually, that's how we identified the drain. Part of the way we identified the drain problem, the complaint was it seemed to happen after a rain event. And so, in looking at what occurs during a rain event, there's rainwater drains on the roof. And as that water travels down, it's causing air movement in that standpipe, which was then that was the odor we were getting in the mechanical room. So that helped us. The first thing in troubleshooting anything is you have to listen to what the complaint is and then put it in context to what's going on. The last complaint we had on January 11th was a very cold span of time. In order to try to control the comfort, we shut down the outdoor air units, which for that period of time we would have been in a negative air pressure because we're still exhausting it. We're not supplying our preconditioned air. Those units, that particular portion of the building is served by a unit that is fed by 100% outdoor air unit. It draws in nothing but outdoor air. It preconditions it, and then it serves about 7 other air handlers, and that's how we pressurize the building. But we can't offset 35-degree air coming in. We can't make up that sensible load on the building with the heat that we have, so we shut down our outdoor air intakes to try to modulate that heat load or lack of heat load. We just can't overcome it. Do the same thing here, but for a temporary period of time of a few days, it's typically not a problem. However, when you get odors migrating within that space, then that's what I think happened.
So really what it looks like then, perhaps our air conditioning system is really designed for worst case scenarios in the middle of August with high humidity, and we had a situation where it was actually shut down during what would be an abnormal cold spell.
Well, we spent about 2 weeks outside of our design days. Yes,
yeah.
We're not designed to deal with those kinds of temperatures low, and we're not designed to deal with them above 95. So, I mean, anything in Florida is generally loaded more towards dealing with the heat than it is the cold.
And I assume when we bring these people in and look at it, we're going to basically have them look at it with the eye of make sure that you understand that we had several days without air and tell us what we're doing wrong here versus coming in here in 2 months whenever we could have 85-degree heat.
We will try to recreate the scenario. I have a fairly good recollection of what was going on at what time. I think most of the issues that we've seen are explainable. I think most of them some of them run in a thread, the emergency generator kicking on and being drawn in. That's understandable and explainable. Some of the others are a little bit more difficult to explain, but some of them are isolated and have already been corrected. In the case of the drains, it's identified, explained, and corrected. So that's not part of our issue right now.
Okay. You're good?
Commissioner Story?
I'm going to take a little different approach to this, because I think the staff has done a tremendous job on this. You followed it, we probably all followed it with emails and stuff. I think that staff has gone above and beyond anything that would be called for this type of problem. And reading some of the backup, I actually think that this is one of those occasions where we've entered the government twilight zone. The fact of the matter is, you can't prove a negative. We'll start with that. And I think that staff has done everything they could to address a problem, which some of them probably are serious and they've been addressed. But the county, with the help of the consultants, in my mind, has done everything possible that a reasonable man or woman would do under these circumstances. And I think that it's fairly clear from the 153 pages of backup that the county staff has looked into more areas and tried harder to find a problem than it would for any other government building. So I think we've gone above and beyond anything that's reasonable. It is a fact that some people are more sensitive than others. Mr. Frame brought that up, and that's absolutely true, and I know this because I'm one of those people who's very sensitive to things. Deodorizers, they make me ill. Perfume makes me ill. Cologne makes me ill. Dogs make me ill. Scented candles I can smell from 2 rooms, 3 rooms away. And in my house, I think I've got every right to control these things, and I do. But I don't have any expectation that the rest of the world will make Herculean adjustments to my sensitivities. Nor do I think it's reasonable for us to impose that type of cost on the taxpayers. I mean, our government spent $283,000 putting in an excellent system. We spent another $40,000 looking for a problem which we have no reasonable expectations to bear. And when you read the backup, and I'm not even going to read the backup because I feel it's too embarrassing to say that we want to go further. So I'm going to go make a motion today which first congratulates our staff for doing everything reasonably possible to address this situation. I think they've done it in an extremely professional, upstanding, upright manner. And congratulate them for the maintenance on that and all other buildings, which I think is exemplary. I've never had the smallest bit of a problem. And of course, I've never reached up to a couple of the air ducts, which the specialist did, to find a little dust on something. And I actually don't intend to. So I'm going to make a motion that we do nothing further except for maintain the great maintenance we have on that and other county buildings.
Second discussion.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Slurry to not proceed with the recommissioning, and that was seconded by Commissioner Wheeler. And Commissioner Wheeler, discussion?
First, I'd like to state the first thing that I've learned today is that Bob's sensitive.
Physically, not necessarily emotionally.
Now, I want to see if you care.
I'm very sensitive, thank you. The other thing is I was, in fact, I chaired this committee when we built the courthouse, and fortunately what was going on in Martin County and Polk County, as Tom mentioned, brought this to our attention. In fact, we delayed the construction of the courthouse, we'll go by memory, so we could spend that $283,000, which in retrospect, based on what I'm hearing here in the backup, paid dividends. We certainly got our money's worth, and this is the first problem we've had. And I also want to commend all of you, and particularly Tom. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I don't know how you did all that off the cuff in such a systematic way and describing everything that happened in minute detail. But I fully agree with Commissioner Solari, and I think everything's been done. I know when you come in this building even, and it was interesting to hear the odors moving from within the building, because at lunchtime when you come in here, you can smell out here in the back very strongly the oil that they're frying in the kitchen, and it goes away after lunch is over and so on and so forth. But anyway, I want to thank you for what you guys have done. You really gone the extra mile, and I fully support Commissioner Solari's position.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I wholeheartedly concur. I want to commend staff. Tom, stellar presentation. In a past employment, I had the opportunity to have to review such documents. I can't say that it's enthralling material to read. It's rather dry, but looking at the ESH report and the infrared study and everything that they have done, I believe that this study is near flawless. And now I looked at the other document that was supplied. I'd like to know how much we spent on that.
$4,500.
And how much for the ESH study?
It was less than $4,500. It was, Lynn might know the number. Is it, well, we've got a list of them right now. I'm not sure which one it was, but as you can see, the most expensive one we had there was $2,170, other than the scanning work that we just had for $69. So about half, but you can significantly more detail.
I found the ESH report, not being an expert, but having had reviewed these documents, ESH report is very thorough and scientific and very diverse, and little or no opinion. And the environment report is quite opinionated, and I believe it left the door open for many other economically burdening opportunities for the taxpayer. With that said, I believe that you've gone well above and beyond, as previously stated, and I got everything that you discussed. I got over this weekend as I was spending several hours. I sure wished I had the opportunity to have this presentation before I took the time to read this. I could have been doing some other things, but nonetheless, it was very interesting, and I believe that we do have a commitment to public safety. I believe that we do have a commitment for the safety and welfare of the citizens who enter into any threshold of any building that we have to operate. And I believe that, well, point taken, point proven. And if there's anything further that we have to do, I'm sure you'll be addressing the concerns. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis, any comments?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would wish to comment on this? Seeing none, we have a motion from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner Wheeler to not move forward with recommissioning. Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
We have passes 4-1 with Commissioner Davis in opposition. That takes us now down to G, Office of Management and Budget, the Senior Resource Association purchase of Meals on Wheels vehicle, memorandum dated February 3rd, 2010. And Jason, you're going to present this, please?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. Jason Brown, County Budget Director, for the record. Back on December 15th, there was a request made to the board. I think Freddie Wolfert was here for an additional vehicle for the Senior Resource Association to provide hot meals on wheels in the Gifford community. As they don't have the ability for the hot meals at the time. The board directed staff to get together with the Senior Resource Association and present something back to you. So here we are today. What they have proposed is the purchase of a vehicle that's about $42,000. There is a 50% match from the United Way Foundation. So the county's 50% portion would be $21,635. So staff is recommending to fund that from the general fund contingency in that amount to be matched by the United Way and a budget amendment, the necessary budget amendment. And I am here for any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Okay.
Move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Flesher, to approve staff recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Jason. Takes us to item I, Public Works, staff update on the Sector 3 beach renourishment project. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning we have an update for the Sector 3 beach project, and I sent every commissioner a copy late yesterday, so you should have received it. But I've got it up on the overhead projector there. Currently, I've got a summary there of the project, but currently we've reached the end of our public notice, our 14-day public notice period. After receiving the notice of intent to issue from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, we were required under the permit and by law to advertise that for 14 days. We did that. Last Friday was the end of the 14-day public comment period. DEP informed us that they did not receive any petitions or comments that could derail the project. So late yesterday, they finally issued to the county our final permit as well as our full notice to proceed for Sector 3. So today, February 9th, we began construction in full. We also expect to receive our permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers today. That's important because in order to place sand seaward of the mean high water line, we need that Corps of Engineers permit. James Gray is going to pick that up today. So today we should have all of our permits, all of our notices to proceed, and they've already begun hauling sand this morning at Wabasso Beach. We'll bring probably about 175 truckloads in there today, which is about 3,000 cubic yards. That would actually average a low day as far as the project goes. We need to average a little over 5,000 cubic yards a day once we get geared up and going. So, but we've started construction today. We had the pre-construction meeting yesterday with the contractor. He gave us some details of the project schedule and where he'd be beginning work. Late last week, we closed Golden Sands Park and Wabasso Beach Park to the public. We needed to do that in order to give the contractor some staging area and time to get going. He didn't utilize as much of that time as we thought he would, but in an abundance of caution, we went ahead and closed those parks in advance. And he's, like I said, he's already begun at Wabasso Beach Park today, bringing sand in. He's also moved equipment and material into Golden Sands Park. He's got probably over 100 pieces of equipment involved in this project between the dredges and front-end loaders and dump trucks and excavators. He's got to bring a lot of material and equipment in, so he's well underway doing that. We're on a separate track. Staff is still reviewing the proposed change order from Ranger Construction. As you can recall, at the last meeting, the board approved the original $7.3 million construction contract with Ranger. You considered their change order number 1. You approved $439,000 of that proposed $984,000 change order, and you asked staff to bring back the remainder of the change order at the next meeting. We've been meeting with Ranger on that. We're still looking at their sand processing costs, and we're also looking, as the board instructed, to have them put into that change order any costs associated with the additional 114,000 cubic yards of sand that's going to be needed for phase 1. So when we bring that back to the board, we expect to have the full sand processing costs addressed, the additional 50% of sand that's needed for phase 1 addressed, and we're going to try and get that all together for the next meeting. They'll need to get us that information this week in order for us to process it and get it all written up for next week. But that's pretty much where we stand with the permitting and construction of this project. I put together just one slide on the construction schedule as far as where we stand. Again, construction began today, February 9th. If we look forward to the 3 months that we have available to do this project, which is February, March, and April, we have a total of 81 days available to do the project. That's 7 days a week. Now, if we look at what's available on Monday through Friday, it's 59 days. And if we look at including Saturdays, it's 70 days. In talking with the contractor yesterday at the pre-construction meeting, he says that he's going to need the 70-day time frame in order to fulfill all the sand requirements for phase 1. It's a tight schedule, and you got to remember, he's going to be building in some poor weather days. There can be equipment breakdowns, labor problems, things like that. But looking at the entirety of Phase 1, he feels that he's going to need the 70 days, which puts him on the road and in the parks on a Saturday. We've begun to inform people of this, that Saturdays are going to be in play as far as the parks goes. But that's what we're looking at as far as his schedule as of yesterday.
Okay.
And that's
Comments, Commissioner Davis?
Yes, just went up to, actually was up at Indian Atlantic yesterday looking at the dredging project, and you know the amount of effect that this has on the beach itself. The staging area and all that's still required for the dredge as much as it is the upland sources. And then having come down A1A and looking at it, I noticed, of course, that the beaches were closed. One thing, Chris, that I think would be nice is to educate anybody that pulls up there. Well, you know, if that beach is closed, where's the closest one where there is no renourishment going on? And I know, I don't know whether it's all the way up at the inlet. I believe we have Treasure Shores up that way.
Treasure Shores would be north of Golden
North
Sands.
of that, and if that one's not closed, if I'm not mistaken, it was just Golden Sands and Wabasso?
Just Golden Sands and Wabasso.
Yeah, if we could, to the north and to the south, perhaps put, just let people know where the closest beaches are for
alternative.
Yes, that are outside of the realm of the and you know, maybe closed for renourishment or whatever we've got to call it. Just let them know A, what's going on, B, why we're doing it, and C, where the closest place is to.
We can add some signs. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I will appreciate that. There on Friday, we spent some time with, I believe, Mrs. Ito and Mr. Mora on that very subject. And yeah, we do have a lack of signage, and we most certainly need a direction there. It was well anticipated that those two outlets would be closed for the duration, but I believe that the public needed to have a better understanding and as to direction as to the alternative sites. Mr. Mora, that's already in motion, though, right?
That's correct.
You have that signage coming forth.
It's not in place yet, but we're going.
It's not in, no, but it's in motion to get printed so we can deploy it. It might have been better to have a reader board and get those characters out and have the information done, but it was explained that after last Tuesday's decision that this the site began the process to be embarked upon and staged, and at that point we probably would have been better off with signs. But the other concern we had was throughout the weekend when the citizens were told that this was going to be a staging area, and I believe we addressed it, but they did not see activity, and I felt that they lost the beach without the activity. But you've just explained that about the paperwork and the reservation of activity, and now that's completely changed. So we're going to go on up there at the completion of the meeting to visit the site.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to, with Phase 1 and moving forward with this, and based on what was said by Ranger Construction last week and also the email that was sent out, you know, it sounds like we've got a potential unsolvable conflict at this point in time. Can you shed a little light on that, or is my thinking off? I mean, when they say they can't do it for that price, and yet we're still negotiating, and I read this where there's no credit for load miles, etc. Where is that going to put us in the big picture? We're going to get halfway through this thing and then find out that we can't continue, or shed a little light for me.
Yeah, we're still working with them. We brought that to light as far as the number of load miles because we felt that was a significant reduction in their costs and that it should be reflected in the change order to our credit. Their original, their initial response was that, well, that's nice, but we don't think we can make an adjustment for that. But we still have to look at their sand processing costs overall, and we want to get all of that configured into a reasonable change order to bring forward to the board to consider. We don't know where this is taking us, you know, to be honest with you, but we're hopeful that we can at least get some sort of a credit with regard to the because their trucking costs are vastly reduced,
right.
and we want them to recognize that.
True, and I don't, you know, in the negotiation phase, I don't want anybody to think that we're over a barrel here, because I think both sides are over barrel right now. We've pretty much made a commitment on this whole thing on both sides. They've got a lot of money invested already, and I'd like to know, and I certainly would expect a credit on miles driven, and also an additional cost on preparation of fill, sand. And I think there's got to be a happy medium there. So I just hope that the negotiations are done in good faith and we move forward.
And that's our goal, to just come to an agreement, meeting in the minds of us.
This is a great day for the county, I believe, getting those permits in hand. And I just want to congratulate Chris, you, and James. And I know Jonathan has moved on, but he was certainly a substantial part of getting this permit going forward. You guys have worked, almost endlessly, overcoming a lot of hurdles and objections. And I think bringing forward a project that when it's all said and done, and we see the final project here, we'll be very proud of the beach we have and how it came about. I think also a lot goes to Ranger. We've been meeting with them almost weekly for the last, 3 months. They've always been professional. They've always, worked with us. So, Commissioner Wheeler, I think we will come to a resolution. The concerns you brought up, because everybody is working real hard to make this thing a great success and save the taxpayers a lot of money. So,
one other thing. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I hope we're communicating with the Sheriff's Office. I don't know that we're going to have a bottleneck or a time during certain periods of the day where we may need some assistance in traffic control. May not occur, but it'd be nice to have them on notice and also monitor the situation for traffic. So if we do have some bottlenecks, the Sheriff's Office can be there to assist.
Yeah. And Commissioner, I spoke with Deputy Luther, and they've already had their meeting on this. The sheriff is well aware of it, right. And they've assigned their patrols appropriately. And that's the other thing, too, is, and I think even Ranger is asking for additional monitoring to make sure the truck drivers do obey the speed limits, make sure they're courteous, make sure their loads are covered, they're not spilling. And I think all the truckers know they're going to be under a microscope, which I think is good for everybody involved, that they'll do the right thing, and the public won't have any inconveniences. So, Commissioner,
where are the signs for the Jake breaks? They're on 69th and 66th.
There's some at westbound on 69th Street, approaching 82nd Avenue, and then they were also requested for east and westbound on 69th Street, approaching 66th Avenue. Right. And we've made the Ranch Road Lake mine aware of that. They've agreed to go ahead and place those additional Jake brake signs at 66.
Yes, I saw at least
so
two.
Yeah,
there was two, but that was instigated by somebody that lives closer to 66th Avenue versus 82nd Avenue.
Okay.
And so it was
we wanted them at both locations.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one other question. The discussion we had about pedestrian traffic along the bridge, that we said that we would be looking at some sort of fencing or guiding or direction so that you can have cyclists or pedestrian traffic be able to continue over the bridge during the heightened traffic. Is that underway?
Well, there'll be no restrictions to pedestrian or bicycle traffic on the Wabasso Bridge, any more restrictions than there are today. But going into the park, we'll have to block access for pedestrians and bicyclists because we don't want them into the beachfront parks while there's construction going on.
So we can anticipate seeing some storm fencing or the orange traffic fencing or signage?
Some barricades or fencing off of those entry points, yeah.
And I did have the occasion to speak with Director Luther as well, and he said he's available 24/7, and he said I'm just about ready to post up his cell phone because he wants to ensure compliance. And we also discussed some of the statutes that would be applying towards the motoring sand delivery, as he is prepared as well, and he said that there'll be ample opportunity for the Sheriff's Office contact if needed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Luther.
Everybody? Chris, thank you very much.
What was the original? Was it January 31st we had originally was the most aggressive timetable that we had on getting our permit?
I think we had originally shot for February 1st as a start
right,
date.
We were kind of waiting for the notice of intent
to
issue.
31st for the permit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, we have just 3 more items left, and I think we should be able to get through them. So instead of taking a break at 10:30, with everyone's permission, we will. Well, a majority
sounds like a consensus
to move forward. Okay, that takes us to Departmental Matters, Utility Services, item 1.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Flesher. Let me just read it into the record, gentlemen. Continuing consulting services work order number 2 with Carter Associates, Inc. for survey design, construction services for 66th Avenue, Phase 2 roadway improvements. Memorandum dated January 20, 2010. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Item 2, amendment number 6 to work order number 2 to post Buckley, Shoe, and Jernigan, obtain environmental survey from Intrix for evaluation of Gulf tortoise habitat disturbance at the North County well site. Memorandum dated January 28, 2010.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded from Commissioner Solari. No further discussion. We will proceed to vote.
Just a quick question.
Okay.
We can't do this in-house? I mean,
We'll ask Eric that.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. Basically, what we're concerned about, we believe there actually may be 1 or 2 gopher tortoises in one of the locations there. We think that we're going to be out of the way of this thing, but in the process of this, if we have to submit for a permit, staff isn't really prepared to submit the permit to U.S. Fish and Wildlife on that. And I think that's, if that's what you're talking about in terms of utility staff.
No, I think we've got an environmental lands manager on staff. And I know that in the past, when there's been situations where Public Works has gotten on top of gopher tortoises, it was I mean, we were able to...
We've actually had them go out initially and locate the tortoises for us, but they kind of shied away from it at that point. So,
if you want, we can see if we can do it and come back next week. You want us to do that?
I don't want to hold it up, but I mean, I really
hold it up.
That'll be the biggest problem is Beth is so snowed under. This would probably delay it for $1,500.
Eric,
we can go whichever way you want to go on this.
I would really like to try to do this in-house if we could, but...
Another week isn't really going to kill us.
Okay.
I mean,
there's already a motion, so I guess we'll...
Yeah, we do have a motion to proceed. Commissioner Flesher, would you like to table this, or you want to move forward?
It's $1,500, and if we can save $1,500 with an assessment...
I'll get with county staff on that.
Excuse me?
I'll get with county staff if that's the decision.
$1,500 is $1,500, and if we can save that through the efforts of county staff, and we had discussed that, and you had clearly stated that we had
that's our preference.
Gone in that endeavor in the past and found that we had to have a certified report, and we did not have the proper staff to carry this through. If we accomplish the goal and save the taxpayer $1,500, I'm most certainly happy to table it until next week and have to bring this back.
And I'll get with them this
So
afternoon.
you've amended your motion to table this to the 16th.
Table this to the 16th, absolutely.
Commissioner Solari, are you...
Happy with the amendment.
Okay, so we have an amended motion to table to the 16th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Pose like sign. Thank you. And that takes us to Commissioner items. C, Commissioner Davis, a request for resolution, memorandum dated February 2, 2010. Commissioner Davis.
Just real quick, Commissioners, this came before the Historic Resources Advisory Council about the Vero Man site. It doesn't cause any expenditures of funds. It's just basically the support for protecting the site until we can get some experts in there to look at it.
Okay.
So, I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded from Commissioner Wheeler to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? Ruth? Oh, I thought you waved. You good? Okay. We'll go ahead and proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Pose like sign. Passes unanimously. There be nothing further for the board. We now stand adjourned.